The Beyond the Ropes podcast is proud to support the Kai and Prince Foundation. Go to www.thekpf.com to donate or support the foundation on their mission of bringing people together to end violence. Founder Dr. Mark Prince's best-selling book, The Prince of Peace, is available on Amazon and other major retailers.
Journeymen, The Art of Survival by Oliver McManus. He's a bum, a fucking bum. And so continued the equally negative rhetoric aimed at Nathan Gorman's opponent on October 20th. A certain Kamil Sokolowski, the large majority of the naysayers taking umbrage with his 12 losses, which by default must mean he's an utterly useless Polish plumber. Whittle back to June when Gorman was facing Sean Turner and Big Sexy was being hailed by the same people as a decent step up for Warren's second favourite heavyweight prospect, the very same Sean Turner that had outpointed Sokolowski 77-75 4 fights previous. That's the smell of hypocrisy, or naivety, probably both. This is the crazy art of being a journeyman. The foundations of many a world champion will have been mastered over rounds and rounds at the beginning of their professional careers against men with losses by the dozen. Whilst it won't look too great on BoxRec for anyone just glancing, the lessons learnt will be invaluable. Journeyman being misunderstood really struck me when I was explaining their role to my girlfriend, and she ended up under the impression that they were just terrible fighters who turn up, get paid and go home. Oh, how wrong she was. Collecting a starting fee of around £1,100, fluctuating according to the stature of the opponent, number of rounds, promoter, to name just a few factors. These reliable operators tour the country week in, week out to test the latest prospects and teach them some harsh realities of professional boxing. It's not as easy as it sounds by any stretch of the imagination. You have to be ready at all times because a fair amount of the time you'll be a late replacement. Ricky Leach, for example, curtailed his holiday just weeks ago in order to take a 4-rounder against Commonwealth champ Ashley Lane on less than 12 hours notice. As a journeyman, you can't just crumble when an onslaught is launched for a KO loss, results in a mandatory 28-day suspension from the British Boxing Board of Control, and with that, a loss of earnings of up to anything like £4,000. Thusly, you'll find these men who choose to fight for the love of the sport ridiculously tough and willing to take on the best that many can throw. People can't understand why journeymen lose fights all the time. Physical strength and durability still isn't enough to guarantee success as a journeyman. A certain mental fortitude is required to rack up the losses and not get disheartened. Sure, it's a job, but we've seen it plenty of times before where a fighter gets his first loss and suddenly loses motivation. There are differences between a prospect and a journeyman losing, but the principle remains the same. The nation's favourite journeyman, as he has been dubbed, Louis Van Pooch, also known as Poochie, explained to me the most common misconception about the craft of fighting in the away corner. People can't understand why journeymen lose fights all the time and seem to think I lose on purpose. They think it's like the craze and the mafia fixing fights. I always get the question whilst people give a smirk. So, people are betting on them at ringside, is it? I just tell them they've watched Snatch too many times. Make no mistake, as a prospect, it will not go all your own way with the likes of William Warburton, Yusuf Al-Hamidi, all willing to put their foot on the gas and engage in a firefight if they spot any kinks in the armour. Journeymen aren't there to roll over. They exist not just to provide experience, but to separate the cream from the crop. People often say, well, that's the difference between fighting Journeyman X in your first fight and Journeyman Y in your 5th fight. And whilst the point is perfectly valid to a large extent, each fighter brings different facets to the game. Someone like Rudolf Duriger is going to be a little rougher, a little dirtier on the inside in comparison to a guy like Yalcin Neves or Anthony Fox, who will fight on the front foot and apply more pressure. Van Pooch described what he tries to bring to a bout. I get work by being durable and tough, making a fight of it and making it entertaining. The promoters are happy as you know, I'm not the average boxer. I come with the old school look and antics during the ring walks, so I think personally I add value for money to the fight. What we're seeing nowadays is a move away from the stereotypical Eastern Bloc fighter and back towards the good old-fashioned British journeyman, a name that a face can be put to, and thusly seems to garner more respect from general fight fans. This, believe it or not, is influenced by Brexit, with foreign fighters demanding more and more money, and as a result domestic equivalents receiving more frequent fight dates and hopefully the financial rewards to match. Without them, there is no boxing. Speak with the likes of Chris Late or Van Pooch and they'll be able to tell you, better than anyone else, who's the real deal and who's got a fair bit to work on. Their experience is aimed at making the opponent look bad, but with the full expectation from the home corner that their man will be able to negate that and emerge a convincing winner. Former English champion Miles Shinkran explained that he wouldn't be the fighter he was today but for the lessons learned in his opening few bouts. They keep the boxing world spinning. Without them, there is no boxing. They're as important as the big stars in aiding development. The thing about these fighters is they aren't bad. You simply cannot be a good journeyman and a bad boxer. The two cannot coexist. You need to know the ropes, quite literally on some occasions. Work your way around the ring and do yourself justice with a decent showing of your own, else the phone will suddenly stop ringing. Look at Craig Derbyshire, Nathan Hardy, Jamie Spate, Anthony Fox. They are all area level fighters when given the opportunity to loosen up and really go at a fight with a full camp. Indeed, Derbyshire and Spate are area champions. Derbyshire, central area title holders at 2 weight categories. Oftentimes you find that if you give a journeyman 8 or 10 rounds, they're far more dangerous than over the short burst of 4 sets of 3 minutes. Van Pooch is a man who has perfected the role of a journeyman. 33 bouts under his belt in 2018, he explained when asked if it irritated him that people bandied the J word around in a derogatory manner. People that know boxing know boxing. People that don't know boxing don't know what a journeyman is. But you can't be a bad boxer and be a journeyman. It's simple. You've got to know your way around the ring and look after yourself. People who look at my record or Chris Late's record will think, fucking hell, he needs to give it up. But he hasn't won in 100 fights. But people who know boxing will say, actually, he's quite decent. I was going to say something quite ambiguous like, as a journeyman, you just can't win, can you? But these guys are the beating heart of the sport we all love. For every Anthony Joshua, there are a dozen Peter Buckleys, who across every weight division put in the hard work to carry prospects one step closer to fulfilling their dream. Of course, there is the nifty slice of money in the back pocket, but let's be clear, it is their love and passion for boxing that keeps them going. The money is just an added bonus. Few fighters will start their journey with the expectation of being a journeyman, but through choice or circumstance, these guys keep the sport grounded and for that deserve the utmost respect.